I would like to call the meeting to order. The time is 7 p.m. This is the monthly Board of Trustees regular meeting, January 12th, 2022. At this time, I'd like for everybody to stand and follow me in recital of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I will call the roll. Trustee Benavidez. Present. Trustee Lewis.
Here.
Trustee Pacheco.
Here.
Trustee Radnovich is on his way, so when he arrives, we'll add him to the minutes. At this time, I'm going to item 4, which is approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve or amend the agenda.
Mayor, I would like to amend the agenda tonight. I would like to make a motion to remove discussion and approval to advertise ordinance number 284 to the February 2022 Board of Trustee meeting. And I'd also like to state for the record that I would like to see the draft ordinance no later than the February meeting. I just feel like we owe that to our constituents on a more timely basis.
Thank you, Trustee Pacheco. I need a second.
I will second it, and I echo her comments. I think this has been going on long enough, and it's time that we get something on the table.
Thank you. I'm going to call for the question. I'm going to call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavidez.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich is not here yet. So the agenda has been amended to remove item 11A. Is that correct, Danielle?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Item 5 is something that occurs every 2 years after an election of new members of the governing body. It is the organizational meeting of the governing body. Pursuant to Section 3-12-3, parentheses 1, NMSA 1978, the Board of Trustees shall elect one of its members to act as Mayor Pro Tem in the absence of the mayor, nomination and approval. I need a motion to open nominations from the governing body for Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to open the nominations, and I'd like to nominate Sandra Pacheco to be the Mayor Pro Tem.
Are there any other nominations? Being none, I need a second.
Second.
Okay. Nominations have been made. Trustee Sandra Pacheco has been nominated to be the Mayor Pro Tem. There are no other nominations. Is there any further discussion from the governing body? Being none, I'm going to call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavidez.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich is not here yet. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay. Thank you. Item B, pursuant to Section 3-11-5 NMSA 1978, the mayor shall submit for confirmation by the governing body the names of persons who shall fill the appointive offices of the municipality. A, Village Treasurer Will Fisher. B, Village Clerk Danielle Cedillo Molina. C, Village Administrator Ann Simon. I need a motion to approve the confirmation of the appointed positions.
I'll make a motion to approve the appointed offices.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion from the governing body? Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavidez.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich is not here yet. C, pursuant to Section 3-11-5 NMSA 1978, the mayor shall submit for confirmation by the governing body the names of persons who shall be employed by the municipality. I'm not going to read all the names because they're on the agenda. I need a motion to approve the confirmation of village employees.
I make a motion to approve the nominations of village employees.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion from the governing body? Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavidez.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich is not here yet. At this time, we're going to go into the public comment period. 6, participants may address the Board of Trustees to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Any submitted written comments that were sent to the clerk prior to the meeting will be now read. Danielle, are there any?
No, sir.
Okay, none. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's start with Mr. Joe Craig. Joe? No public comment. Thank you. None. Okay. Mr. David Montoya? You have 3 minutes. You can come over there, please.
Can I test these now?
Of course you can.
Thanks.
Now,
Thank you very much.
we need to ask you a question, David. Does this have anything to do with the RFP?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Who's going to keep time, Danielle? Okay.
So I think Pam's gonna kind of help me because I didn't know I was gonna be able to read because I was fogged up with these, so maybe, we could split the time and we'll have 3 minutes apiece, if that's okay?
No, you only have 3 minutes in total. You have to be quick.
Okay, go ahead.
So my name is Pamela Montoya. I'm David's wife. And he wanted the board to be aware of a snapshot of his time leasing the Paseo del Norte. It didn't always look like it does now. In early 2007, he approached the village 3 times regarding the property, encouraging them to follow the agreement with the state of New Mexico and the North Valley Neighborhood Association. Disregard for this property after construction in the 90s had resulted in it becoming an unsightly dump on what used to be beautiful farmland behind Yanamoto's. He suggested that he would be willing to clean up the site and his expense would be an in-kind lease. He moved 20,000 plus cubic yards of dirt, removed old appliances, auto parts, concrete rubble, trees, stumps, and miscellaneous debris. This raw land was ripped, plowed, disked, laser leveled, and planted. The cleanup and initial planting, finished in 2009, came at a cost of over $89,000. 2008 was given an agreement stating he had 4 5-year agreements. 2009, he returned his original lease documents to comply with the village request regarding state regulation. 2010, he was given 6-year lease plus additional 5-year option, and this was backdated to 2007. On several occasions, Mayor Abraham met with him and requested construction of a new road, walking paths, bike and horse trails, and new exterior fencing. He rebuilt the roadway with asphalt millings, then removed them at his request and replaced them with crusher fines due to complaints by equestrians. Cost for these requested items was over $50,000. The 2016 farm plan and 5-year request was presented at the village meeting and was approved. 2017, the village agreed to pay $10,500, which is 12 acres at $850, due to non-payment of MRGCD fees and the loss of the crop, which was approved in that farm plan. 2018, the farm plan format was changed. On 9/10/2018, received an email from Fergus regarding the annual farm plan, stating that the lease would be a 5-year lease and would have to renew with a new farm plan for further 5 years once the initial 5 years was almost up.
Mrs. Montoya, the time is up.
Okay?
Let me offer this comment. We will address every one of these issues in a written letter to both of you. Okay?
Okay.
So that's the end of your public comment, but thank you
Okay.
for providing this
So-
information.
So I was talking to, for David's public comment because he couldn't read it due to the foggy.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, so can he do his
No, 3 minutes for public comment.
for both? Both?
Well, I'll make an exception. Go ahead. You can have 3 minutes, David.
Well,
I mean,
I don't need 3 minutes.
okay, please, go right ahead.
So I've invested over $139,000, close to 140 plus. And I know it's hard to remember what the place looked like. And I didn't actually send in photos, but everything is kind of written in. I did send in the attachments so you can kind of get an idea of what is involved. But I just kind of wanted, there's new board members, and I wanted everybody to kind of know that, you know, what had actually occurred on the property and where we took it from and why I did this. And also, keep in mind that I paid the money in advance. When usually a lease goes and you pay annually. But in this case, I paid all the money in advance. And actually, the lease started before even the work was done because it was backdated after 2010, as Pam read. So you can kind of get an idea of maybe a better understanding of what's going on. But I thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you, David.
Mr. Mayor,
Appreciate
can
it.
I ask David a question?
Go right ahead.
So David, where does your lease stand today?
Pardon me?
Where-
The lease is, it hasn't been renewed since 2018. So I don't really have a lease at this time. So I've still been there and I've been waiting for a lease because Mayor Abraham died. And that was a tragic loss. And then, so since then, we've been struggling with getting a new lease. It hasn't happened because we had Bob Pearls, we had, before that, we had Kelly Ward, and everything's a big transition. And so there is actually no lease right now.
Okay,
But I'm still sending in the insurance and I'm still insured and still carrying on the same activities.
sure. And I understand it's hard to farm short-term. You need some kind of long-term security. So
Right.
we'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Next.
much.
Okay, thank you very much, David and Pamela. Okay, now we have, is it Danielle Montoya?
No, that was David.
Oh, David, well, there's another Montoya here.
That's his wife.
Oh, I'm sorry, then, okay, then that answers that question. Okay, so we have David, what's your last name? Dunaway. Please, come forward, you have 3 minutes.
I'm an author and professor who's lived in the village for some time, and I want us to paraphrase a recent motion picture to look up. Because air traffic over our little village is increasing. Planes leave the Sunport to take a shortcut over Los Ranchos. The APD police copters come into our airspace. You have before you 2 articles, one from the Albuquerque Journal and another from the New York Times. I won't duplicate that nor the statement that I've given you. But let me just point out that according to the paper, our weekly, the city's master plan for Double Eagle Airport estimates 102,000 takeoffs and departures annually. That's right, 102,000. As you know, that airport we're right on the line from departures from that airport. The New York Times piece talks about how the FAA's next-gen plan using GPS rather than radar is increasing the noise in many metropolitan areas. I urge you to take a look at that particular one in some detail. Here's the statistics they give us about a little town called Burbank, north of Los Angeles. 2016, 577 complaints. 2018, following the next-gen plan, sending airplane after airplane in a straight line across suburbs, 212,798. By 19, this turned up to 616,022. Add to this, in the future, thinking ahead, unregulated drone usage, electronic aircraft, And I think I want to urge you quite simply, and I'm willing to participate in this undertaking, to have a committee on the airspace of Los Ranchos to create a policy and study how others have handled the emergent situation of a village at the end of Metropolis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Kay Beeson. Thank you. That's the end of public comment. Let me give this back to the village clerk. Okay, let the record reflect that trustee Radnovich is here. Thank you, George. Welcome to the governing body of Los Ranchos.
Thank you very much.
Item 7 is presentations. We are lucky to have Mr. George Radnovich as a trustee. New Mexico chapter of American Society of Landscape Architects Merit Award in the category of Design Constructed for the 4th Street Revitalization. Do you have a presentation
Mayor,
or a plaque?
I
And if you don't have it, you can bring it to us.
I will bring it to the village tomorrow.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to say that there were many more entries than there were awards by a very large margin.
I remember that.
And thank you for coming to
Oh, absolutely.
to the award ceremony
Yes.
there. And we were lucky enough to get one of the awards, the Merit Award for the 4th Street project. I also plan to submit the project to the National ASLA
Wonderful.
committee next year.
Okay.
Or actually, it's this year. And so I'm pretty confident we'll have another one going after that.
I appreciate it, trustee Radnovich. Did somebody say something?
Congratulations.
Of course. Yeah, congratulations. Yes, of course. Thank you. So now we're going to move to the consent agenda. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We have item 8A, which are the minutes of the November 10th, 2021 regular meeting. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I need a second.
I'll second.
I'm going to call for the question. Call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides.
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at the previous meeting. So.
That's fine. Abstain. Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
I'm going to do the same. I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at the last meeting.
That's fine. Okay, item 9, departmental reports. Mayor's report, administrator's report, Agri-Nature Center manager's report, planning and zoning director's report, and the project manager's report. Public safety report, special report, Los Ranchos Growers Market. Departmental reports are included in the packet and reflect all of the activities listed for 2 reporting periods. In addition, we have a special report from the Los Ranchos Growers Market. Is there someone here from the Growers Market tonight? Don't see anybody here. Okay, so obviously that can't happen. If the governing body has questions regarding these reports, we will have each trustee ask all their questions before we move to the next trustee. So let's start with Trustee Benavides.
I was curious as to how they count the attendance at the growers market.
Well, we'll have to wait for.
Yeah, so that can, nobody's here to answer that, but that's all I have.
Thank you. Let's move to Trustee Lewis.
Okay, just a moment here. My first question's for Administrator Simon. If you could just give us a little update on the village center as far as the mobile home park and the self-storage units.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Trustee Lewis. The Village Center project is very close to breaking ground. We're excited to be meeting with Palindrome, his whole team. We're working on looking at the plating, the design for utilities, the curb cuts needed, the traffic impact study, all of those preliminary design items that need to be addressed before we begin construction. We also have heard that Palindrome will be submitting its first milestone financing application on January 19th to close the first week in April. So they are on schedule to begin the project on time. In terms of some of the properties that are there at the center site, we are currently looking into removal of the mobile homes that are all vacant now at this time, and we are gating and locking the storage facility.
Now, you were talking a little bit about the homeless too. We're having some break-ins out there on the corner.
Thank you, Mayor Trustee Lewis. There have been some problems, and we have an excellent partnership with Bernalillo County Sheriff, who continue to do welfare checks in the area. They do patrols, and they've actually been utilizing the storage facility as a training ground for their dog patrol, sending the dogs in ahead of time, letting the dogs scope out the various nooks and crannies of the storage facility. But they've been a really great resource, and we've really appreciated having them on site.
Thank you. My next question. My next question was for Maria Rinaldi. I think you'll take that in. And I was wondering, I know we have a February 28th deadline with Bohannon Houston regarding the 30% design and 30% drainage. And I was curious where they're at, if they're going to meet that schedule.
Thank you, Mayor Trustee Lewis, trustees. Yes, we have been working with BHI, Bohannon Houston, on the preliminary design for the second phase of 4th Street. And it's our understanding that they should be delivering everything to us, certainly by the February 28th deadline, and we should have cost estimates by January 14th. So we are looking forward to seeing that 30% design. That will conclude that task order, and when we get that design, then we will go out to the public for input, charrettes, and so forth.
Thank you. My next question's for Fred. Fred, I just wanted you to bring us up to speed on the citizens' issues that you're dealing with, the speeding issues, noise, and Dietz Farms. If you could just.
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, trustees, a couple of things. One, we've been getting a lot of complaints on noise issues in certain areas. Thomas, the code enforcement officer, has been responding not only in writing, but in person with those people, talking to them. We have a meeting tomorrow, Thomas and I and Tiffany, to discuss on a couple of the properties that we still have the problems with, and we're probably going to proceed to municipal court on a couple of those issues. We also have some other issues on speeding and stuff, especially on Guadalupe Trail. Actually, staff and I have been working on a plan that we will present to you in the February meeting. on road safety issues that we're proposing on Guadalupe Trail, on Chavez, and on El Pueblo and Guadalupe Trail, to make some changes to those, and, and Ranchitos.
Okay.
And we'll submit that plan to you, and hopefully then we can proceed with that, to try and reduce some of those issues that we keep, the reoccurring issues that have been going on for years.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Fred. I have no more questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Lewis. Trustee Pacheco.
Thank you, Mayor. My first, it's actually not a question, but a comment. I just wanted to go on record to thank Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Pablo Real for his work with us on the Board of Trustees. And I'd also like to thank Trustee Tom Riccobini for his time that he served with us on the Board of Trustees. It was definitely my pleasure to work with both of them. Similarly, I would like to welcome both George and Gil to the Board of Trustees, and we look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see, this would be for Administrator Simon on the sign ordinance. What have been the inconsistencies on the signs that have been up?
Thank you, Mayor Trustee Pacheco. We've had several inconsistencies. For example, we don't allow technically in the code sandwich boards, but sandwich boards are pervasive throughout the village. There are inconsistencies on the sizing of political signs. We currently actually don't even have any language that specifically relates to political signs, so we fall back on agriculture signs, things like that. And we're just going to be cleaning that up in this year.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Again, Administrator Simon. First of all, I just want to congratulate the staff for the work in providing the village with a clean audit this year. That's a beautiful thing. Let's see, what is the timeline for mitigating the problems on Chavez? I know that we have been talking about putting a plan together, a study. Where are we on that?
Mayor Trustee Pacheco, there's so many issues on Chavez. I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. But as our public safety officer, Mr. Radosevich, just mentioned, we are looking into a number of safety issues on our streets. And one of them is to address Chavez Road. And maybe now's a good time for you to get into that, Fred.
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, trustees, issues with parking. We're looking at some parking issues on clear sight triangles next to intersections. We're looking at, we've already reduced the width of the roadway by the striping to try and slow some of the traffic down. We're going to put crosswalks. There's actually already a crosswalk, a couple of crosswalks there. We're going to add them to other intersections, again, in the signage to slow people down. We're discussing, and again, this will be part of the plan that'll be presented to you all on during the February meeting, about restricting parking in front of commercial zones and trying to eliminate some of those issues. And then we've got, I think Keene has 3 or 4 portable speed boards on order. They've been on order for months now. The problem is the chips, you can't get any chips and they can't build the things that they're supposed to do. But he did talk to the company, I believe, last week, and they're talking maybe within a month we'll get some of those additional speed boards. We'll get that put together and then work with the sheriff's office on the speed issues that we do have there. The biggest problem is, if you look at the traffic counts on Chavez, that's on the east-west streets within the village, the highest in the village. It's about 4,800 vehicles a day,
What is the next one down from that?
about 2,900, I believe,
Okay, so-
which is El Pueblo.
Dramatic.
So we're looking at a lot of those, the trail application that Maria Rinaldi and the village submitted. I believe they're waiting to hear any time on whether that's been approved or not. And then we can start also implementing some of those things that are working on that.
Terrific. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
I also just wanted to say thank you for finding a solution to move the Schulte House. I know that this has been kind of before us for a while, and I'm just glad that Jenny Schulte stepped up and agreed to pay for the move of the house, so that's great. Let's see. Again, you know, we've talked about the homeless issue. I'm kind of moving this way, and I just wanted to say thank you for addressing the concern by citizens. I think this is, you know, it calls attention to a first step in finding the best process to address. And I know we're working with the sheriff's department in just providing a solution for these homeless issues. So thank you for that as well. And Joshua's not here. Should I just hold my questions or ask?
No, ask the question,
Okay.
we'll write it down, and we'll get you an answer.
Okay. I was just curious how the workshops have been, and I know he put a lot of information in here, but I'm curious to see if they're well-attended, and if they're not, if there's anything else that we might be able to do to get the attendance up for those workshops.
My understanding, Trustee Pacheco, is that the attendance is very reasonable. For example, the recent butchering workshop had over 20 people.
Oh, wow.
And I was told that it was quite successful.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, yeah, I was just curious to see if there was more that we needed to do to help.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Trustee Pacheco. We have been paying for Facebook ads, and those seem to be really helping. And then a lot of it is just having our partners help us share the events on our social media. We've been getting between 15 and 20 people per workshop.
Great. Fantastic. And then the Matanza. I mean, this is another thing that we've been talking about for a while, and I'm excited to see that it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Just wanted to know a little bit more about what kind of activities are going to take place, who's being invited, how people are being invited, that kind of thing.
And are you able to address that?
Yeah, Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, we've been talking a lot about this Matanza, both in the village amongst the staff and at the Agri Futures meeting, where we're going to be using this event really to glean information from the community about their desires about agritourism, to sort of leverage the economic development potential and agritourism economic development potential of the event. And I don't know that we have a full marketing plan for how we're going to alert residents, but we'll use our typical channels, our Facebook ads, the vision, the website, and then our networks. And it really seems to be when others share the event, that's when people
word
get
gets out.
excited.
Fantastic. Thank you. The Nature's Niños Outdoor School. And it said that it's going to happen at the Agri-Nature Center 3 days every month throughout the spring semester. Is there a cost for the children to attend that? Do we know?
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, I'll have to check on that. I know that they have been coming over and using the facility. They bring their own instructors for the most part, but it's great to have kids and education on the campus.
And their age range, do we know what that is? Is it like elementary? Is it?
I believe it's elementary, but we'll get back.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ann. This is for Director Justice. I was just curious if we are seeing a decrease or increase in applications for permits for the film industry. Just really hadn't seen anything, didn't know if it had slowed down, is it picking up?
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, I'll have to check on that. It did pick up a little bit last year, and now that it's winter, I don't think we've seen a whole lot, but we'll get back to you.
Okay. And then under the ordinance revisions, there's the IBC IRC. What does that stand for?
I'm sorry, Mayor, Trustee Pacheco will have to get back to you on that.
Thank you.
I thought that had to do with aligning some of our building codes with Bernalillo counties. So that-
Oh, okay.
So that we were basically.
On the same
Yeah, on the
page.
same wavelength.
Okay.
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, it's the International Building Code
Okay.
and International Residential Code.
Okay, so that, I'm sure that's what that was. Great. Already addressed that. I think that's all I had. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pacheco. Trustee Radnovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I had put a bunch of notes on my package, and I don't know where they went. So I'm going to have to get with Danielle, so bear with me
Thank you.
on the questions I have and comments. One is I was really happy to see that the Business and Economic Development Committee is supposed to meet in January. And I was wondering, is that still happening? And have you set a date yet?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, yes, it's currently scheduled to be in person January 19th, COVID prohibiting. And it is, it will be noticed. And it is, at this point, we are talking about it as an advisory board, not really a standing committee per se. And it is really to discuss and advise us on economic development matters.
Nice. And will that be an ongoing meeting or an ongoing committee that will meet monthly or quarterly, or do you have any idea?
Mayor Trustee Radnovich, we are actually going to ask the group how they want to organize.
Nice.
So I think we'll define that on the 19th.
How many people are in the group?
Right now, we have about 19.
Excellent. Oh, that's really good. Thank you. And let's see. Oh, I was looking, and I look forward to hearing Fred's plan next week. As you probably know, speed bumps aren't the only way to slow down traffic. And so having that many speed bumps in the village can be a real issue just as much as the fast traffic. And I would implore you to look at ways to slow traffic in other ways. And there are many out there, including the use of street trees, the use of trails and sidewalks, narrowing the road. And they don't always have to be speed bumps. So I look forward to seeing what you have, Fred, and thank you for mentioning that. On the Agri-Nature Center, there's going to be a new road and parking. Does the road follow the same alignment as the existing road? And how much parking is going to be attached to the road improvements?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, the road is similar to the current alignment. We smooth out the kind of more perpendicular turns, and then we add ADA parking, which currently does not exist. I think we set up about 20, 25 spaces. But there's a whole nother area where the bark mulch currently is on the north side of the facility, where we park now, that could be future parking. But we're not really developing that. At this point, we're putting our effort closer to the building, close to the current vineyard for ADA parking and more accessibility.
Nice. How wide will the road be?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. I would encourage us to keep it as narrow as possible as well, to keep our village character. I was really happy to see the fight to save the 100-year-old tree. I think I communicated with Trustee Pacheco and a few other people, including you, Ann, and I was just happy that we decided that's a beautiful tree, and we need to do more for the trees in the village. It's really part of who we are, and so I just wanted to commend you on that, and thank you. The Homeless Coordinating Council and the City of Albuquerque Resource Team, I wanted to ask a little bit about. I have seen more homeless, and not only at, I don't know who mentioned it, but in this report, I believe there was a mention of Smiths being a problem for homeless people. There's also a homeless person at the interchange at 2nd Street in Paseo, and he's not a very friendly-looking person, I will say. And I think we really have an oncoming problem here. I office down on Route 66 and on Central Avenue, and it's a horrible problem. I met with the mayor of Albuquerque and the police captain for that area today, and it's a real problem all over the metropolitan area. So I'm hoping that we don't end up with a similar problem. So I think we really need to watch that and see if there are ways we can help to abate anything to do with more problems with kind of the psychological issues that some of them bring and the vandalism that some of them bring. There's a real, I noticed at the El Camino restaurant, a break in the door, and I asked Amanda about that, and she said that someone had just thrown a brick or piece of concrete or something at the door, and we're seeing that in other parts of the metropolitan area of Albuquerque as well, and we really need to watch over that. So if Fred has any, you don't have to give a report. Well, maybe you have something to say, Fred, but we sure need to watch that. The trees kind of. We sure need to watch that problem because it could just increase as urbanity starts trying to move up 4th Street into the village.
Mayor and Trustee Rednovich, and trustees, on that, actually Ann attended one of those coordinating council meetings along with the sheriff's office. Bernalillo County passed a tax several years ago, to deal with mental health issues and mental health crisis in New Mexico. They're finally getting off the ground on some of those projects. So I think between the city of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, they're putting teams out, they're doing some things. And so we've been coordinating with them and working with them to try and work on those issues. And I can tell you that Ann and I are working with that council and the other people that are involved in that to try and stay on top of that.
Is the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office also involved in that?
Yes, they are. The issue is that we're trying to, it's not a law enforcement issue. And that's what we're trying to do away with, that perception that it's a law enforcement issue. And they've got these community impact teams that don't involve law enforcement. And one of the issues that we had there, I think at the Smiths area, and got a hold of them, the city of Albuquerque, and they have a process in place. They go out and notice them. They go out and send workers and mental health people, crisis intervention people to try and work with them. But they also give them like a 72-hour notice to leave. And then they follow that back up within 72 hours. So it's still a law enforcement issue, but we're trying to shift that away from that to get other people involved and try and work through those issues without dealing with law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Ann. Again, bear with me, I'm sorry. I was really happy to read about O'Halloran's Gold as well. It's a hops, it's a beer that the Hops Brewery is making. I don't think bear with me, sorry. Just trying to remember. I think that's all I had, Mayor.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Trustee Radnovich. I appreciate it. We're now going to move to item 10, financial business. Item A is discussion and approval of the November 2021 cash report. Ann Simon.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Before you is sorry, Mayor, are we taking this one cash report at a time?
Yes.
Before you is the November 30th, 2021 cash report. Items of unusual or significant item is that the general fund, planning and zoning, professional services engineers, page 7, is $10,543.42. This expenditure is higher than normal due to payment to Bernalillo County Public Works for $10,000 for the village's portion of the Alameda Drain stormwater management model. And that's actually a project that occurred in 2019. So they were just late in billing us. In the general fund, general administration attorney fees and settlement, page 8, $31,000. Due to timing of payments, 2 months of general counsel service invoice were paid during November. Capital expenditures, capital roadways, bridges, and culverts, page 13, $6,061.75 for items purchased to complete infiltrators in roads around the village, particularly on Gardunio Road. These are low-cost infiltrators, as you might recall, that have been very effective. The American Rescue Act, maintenance, grounds, and roadways, page 19, $10,000 for payment to Armando Campo for a trailer park settlement at the Martinez Trailer Park. Capital project infrastructure improvements, 4th Street and MDOT, page 24, $19,292.82 for professional services on 4th Street Phase 2, page of Bohannon, Houston. And finally, capital project buildings, agri-nature center improvements, $4,321.50 for 5th payment to Insight Works for work on the agri-nature center project. Insight Works, as you may recall, is Knight CV, who's the architect. I stand for questions.
Let me ask for a motion in a second, then we'll have discussion from the governing body. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion
To approve.
to approve
I need a
the
second.
cash report.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, at this time then, is there any discussion or questions from the governing body?
I do have one question, Mayor. The page, that would be page 48. I don't quite understand the encumbered, where it says discretionary, and then there's that little highlight. This does not take into account the end-of-year transfer to property reserve of $250,000. I don't quite understand that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, trustees, 2 of you may recall when we did the budget prep back in April of 2021, there was a desire, since we budgeted so conservatively, that if GRT revenues came in higher than expected, we would set some funds aside for the purchase of property in the village. And we knew that there were some parcels coming up that we wanted to prepare ourselves to be in a position to jump on. And so that, when you look at the gray area in that report, encumbered means it is obligated or specific to a purpose. Happy to go over any of these items. Discretionary means that is open for new allocation. And then we just had a sort of parenthesis that we still agreed as a Board of Finance that we would try to move 250,000 at the end of the year into property acquisition.
But that 188,000 is not a part of that, or could be a part of
Correct.
that?
It could be.
Okay. Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Thank you.
Any further discussion from the governing body?
I do have a question.
Sure.
So, page 49 of the revenue information for November 30th, 2021. At the very top, there's a total GRT, which I think I understand. There's a franchise tax, and there's the fund revenue. Can you explain the source of that? And is it included in the 349,000?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, typically we just look at GRT, and these franchise tax, other general and fund are other revenue sources that we have in the village, and they encompass a lot of different things, land rents and things like that. The GRT is the largest income source for the village, so that's what we track.
So I'm sorry, so the franchise tax and the fund revenue, that is revenue that comes into us, right? So does it not show up in the other tables?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, it shows up in other places on the cash report. And you will see it on page 52.
52. Okay,
If you look at 2021, 2022 original, it should say budget, but the word budget is cut off. You will see those are the revenue sources that come into the village.
okay, but I don't see, okay, so I'm looking at the column that you say 2021, 2022 year-to-date? Is that where I should be looking?
Sorry, it's the fourth column from the
Okay.
left.
Okay, so original, it says
Sorry,
original.
1, 2, 3, fourth column from the left.
Okay, from the left, okay. So.
Year
it's
to date.
Year-to-date, okay. And so where do I see franchise, for example? Is it there? Am I missing it?
Franchises, you will see. I'm sorry, Mayor and Trustee Benavides, I'm not seeing where franchise is listed. It is a revenue stream for us, and I'll just have to find it.
In the larger cash reports that we used to see, it was there. I'm sure it was there, because I've
It
seen it.
was there.
Oh, it was always there.
We have just tried to abbreviate. We used to get 35 pages or so of cash reports.
So we have a
So
smaller
we're-
cash report now than we used to have before, because the other one was very hard to.
But it's summed in there,
Oh, of course it is.
And you can ask for more detailed information?
so it's summed into what's called general fund revenues?
Probably.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, the franchise revenue is rolled up in the general fund. Thank
Okay.
you.
It's
Tammy.
rolled up, yeah.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor?
So that first line of revenues, general fund, you'll see 3.458655.
Yes,
That includes GRT and franchise.
okay, thank you.
If I may, also for the new trustees, this is something that we just started like about December, trying to consolidate this. This is sort of a fluid motion. As you have these questions, we can always go back and add more
Detail.
forms. Or you can go see, maybe it goes back to the cash report for July, for the start of the year. You
Sure.
can see all the detail we got.
Okay, yeah,
And because at any time, if there's something that you don't think you're getting, we want to make sure for all of us as we're experimenting with this, that if there's not something you're wanting to see every month, then let's get it added in.
I'm not sure that I need more detail, I just wanted to understand that.
Sure.
Of course,
It was included,
sure.
yeah.
Any,
you.
any further discussion from the governing body? If not, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Item B, discussion and approval of the December 2021 cash report. Ann Simon.
Mayor, trustees, thank you. Hopefully this one will be easier. The cash report for the month of December 31st, 2021, ending cash balance at December 31st, 2021 is $8,280,419, which is an increase of $121,466.31 for this month. Year-to-date excesses of revenues over expenditures is $1,085,009.84. Unusual or significant items, December 2021 was a month where there were 3 payrolls on 12/3, 12/17, and 12/31, where there are normally 2 payrolls per month. Therefore, payroll expense was higher than normal. Other than that, there are no unusual or significant items. Stand for questions.
Thank you, Ann. I need a motion and a second, then we'll open it for discussion. I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the December cash report.
Need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, at this time, is there any discussion or questions from the governing body?
Mayor and trustees, I have to make one correction on page, sorry.
It would be 59, wouldn't it?
Thank you, yes, on page 59 of your packet. In front of you, you'll see a new cash balance summary by fund page. That is this is the same page we were looking at for November, but it is for December. The correction is in 216, the municipal street fund. There was an incorrect number of $578,764 figure when it should have been $78,899.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann. Okay. Any other discussion or questions from the governing body? If not, calling for the question, calling for
I
the,
have one question.
go right ahead, sir.
In the check register, is this the speed boards that you talked about, the check to highway supply for $4,000 something?
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, no. This is actually some signs, 12 signs that we purchased along Rio Grande Boulevard at the trails, both the trail at Paseo del Norte, along Paseo del Norte, and the trail at Montano. And we purchased bright green signs to sensitize drivers and for public safety. That work occurred in the fall, but we received the bill in December.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
I do have.
Go right ahead, Trustee Benavides.
Yeah, so on this, the same page that we've been looking at, page 59, the line that says capital project buildings, item 312. So there's a negative number, there's negative numbers in there, right? Because it's in parentheses. Is that because it's a new item that wasn't budgeted for? And I'm sorry, I'm probably asking questions that are obvious to everybody else, but this is all
No.
new to me.
Good, let's see, Tammy. can
Don't ever
respond.
be shy.
So she is about to respond, but Mayor, Trustee Benavides, the beginning cash balance is what we started the fiscal year with. So you'll see that we already started with a deficit. Then there was probably movement out of that fund, but it's on a reimbursement basis. By the end of the year or end of the grant, it should zero out. So right now, there's expenditures of, well, you have an ending cash balance of negative 16,453.44. We will be reimbursed for that amount by the state, and then it will be zero.
So we don't have to move money into that
No.
particular line item. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion from the governing body?
Mayor, I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Under capital project infrastructure, I'm assuming that what's showing a deficiency of 284,890 is for fees or something like that came out of that. Is that the 4th Street project, or is that a multiple projects?
Let's see.
And that's under the excess column. We had a beginning cash balance of $466,173.61. But the excess or the deficiency is 284,890.46, and I was wondering what that was. Sorry to make you go back and forth on all your paperwork there, Ann.
No, it's okay. Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, trying to just get a response from Tammy. Okay. Because this is a reserve fund, it can only be spent on certain items. And most are on a reimbursement basis, which is what causes the deficit. There's only one project that is on a disbursement basis. So that one project, we got the money ahead of time, which is the $466,000 you see as the beginning cash balance. Let me see if I can identify any of the particular projects.
Again, I'd like to just, if I may, Mr. Mayor, reiterate, before in our packet, we might get 3 or 4 pages on just this one fund.
I see.
And what's all in it. And so because that's not something necessarily that we were, had to see every month, or we knew, we just spent that money and we know the state either hasn't paid us or the state paid us early. So we took those pages out. But on any of these, if you have questions, Tammy can obviously either send you more or we can add them back to the packet.
And we don't have to wait for Ann to find all of that tonight, Mayor. I was just
You could have
curious what
Tammy-
that,
Yeah.
We'll
Tammy can
get you
send
an
those
answer.
Pages,
For sure.
and then you can decide if I'd like to see this added to our packet anytime.
All right, any further discussion from the governing body or questions? It being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
yes.
Item C, discussion and approval of resolution number 2022-01-03, a budget adjustment, BAR, for an appraisal of property along Rio Grande Boulevard for potential acquisition by the village for conservation purposes. Ann Simon.
Yes, Mayor, trustees. This item is allowing us to move some of the funding from that dedicated land acquisition fund that we just talked about over to a budgeted line item that will allow us to pay for an appraisal of a parcel that we would like to purchase. We do not have that line item budgeted, so we need the bar to move the line, to move the funds.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask which property this is for?
Do you want me to say?
Which property? Are we talking about this one right here? Okay, we're talking about the Hartnett Park area.
No, I'm sorry, no, Mayor, I'm
Okay.
sorry. It is for a parcel that is adjacent to the Agri-Nature
Okay,
Center.
so it's the Anderson.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Before I ask for discussion, I do need a motion and a second. Go ahead, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution number 2022-01-03.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, now, is there any discussion or questions from the governing body? I think, did we answer your question?
You did, thank
Okay,
you.
any other questions or discussion?
Just curious, how big is the property? It's vacant, I assume?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, it's about 7 acres.
Is it vacant?
Yes.
Yes, it's vacant. Okay, it is.
And Mayor, can I ask a question about it?
Sure.
Where in relation to the Agri-Nature Center is it?
It's
north.
directly north,
North,
Directly north.
got it.
contiguous with our property.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion or questions from the governing body? Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Unfinished business, item 11. A, that has been amended. This item has been deferred, so we don't talk about that. Item 12, new business. A, discussion and approval of resolution number 2022-01-01, establishing the Board of Trustees meetings and public notice requirements as required by the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, Chapter 10, Article 15. Clerk Danielle Cedillo Molina.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and trustees, what you have in front of you is Resolution 2022-01-01. Per the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, each public body should adopt an annual resolution at a regularly scheduled open meeting stating its procedure for giving notice of meetings and public notice requirements. This resolution states just that. Once passed, the resolution will be placed on the website under public notices and is also posted in the office of the clerk. And I stand for any questions. Thank
Need a
you.
motion and I need a second before we get to discussion. I need a motion.
I'll move to approve resolution number 2022-01-01.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, is there any discussion from the governing body?
Yeah, let's see, I did highlight something. Section 8, and I think I just didn't quite understand what it was, and maybe you can explain it. So I'll read it, it's just one sentence. The Board of Trustees may close a meeting to the public only if the subject matter of such discussion or action is exempted from open meeting requirements under Section 10-15-1H of the Open Meetings Act. So what is that all about?
Nan Winter, do you think you could answer that question, please? Nope. There.
Mayor, trustees, as you know, the state requires you to adopt an Open Meetings Act resolution every year. But you are allowed to have not only regular meetings, you're allowed to have special meetings, and you're allowed to have closed meetings. The section H that's referenced in the ordinance refers to the state list of exemptions where you do not have to have an open meeting. For example, you can close a meeting or have a closed meeting to deal with personnel actions. You can have a closed meeting to deal with the acquisition of real estate. You can have a closed meeting to deal with litigation. So H refers to those exempt subject matters where you don't have to have an open meeting.
Okay, yeah, so personnel action, that'd be confidential.
Yes.
Yes.
The acquisition of property, why would that be included?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, because, you know, when a governing body or a government attempts to acquire real estate, it piques other people's interests and potentially
Bidding war or something like that? Yeah.
it messes with the competitive environment. So we have to be particularly careful of things like that. But
Okay, I
you
get it.
still have to notice a closed meeting. There's in fact special requirements for noticing a closed meeting. And I think in the 2 years that I've been here, we have not had a closed meeting.
We
So,
did have one 3 years ago, though.
okay,
Yes.
yeah, they're not that common.
They're not often.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions from the governing body? Okay. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Thank you. Item B, discussion and approval of resolution number 2022-01-02, a resolution adopting the 2021 to 2026 Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Hazard Mitigation Plan. We have Jeff Phillips in the audience and Administrator Simon also. Jeff, please give us your report.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. I'm Jeff Phillips. I'm your volunteer emergency management coordinator. And we staff do recommend that you adopt the 2021 Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Hazard Mitigation Plan by Resolution 2022-0102. First off, let me give you just a tiny bit of background. Mitigation planning occurs roughly on a 5-year schedule. The village committed $5,000 in late 2019, along with the other entities in the geographic area, with City of Albuquerque acting as the fiscal administrative agent for this project. We selected Wood Environmental and Infrastructure Solutions to lead the effort. That's a consulting group who has a lot of experience in mitigation planning. We kicked off in July of 2020 with the expectation that we would be done by the end of 2020 and hopefully adopting in January 2021. Societal impacts obviously put a damper on a lot of efforts. So we finished late last year. I do want to emphasize we were faithful to the process the entire time, and we can be very proud of this product. So the next thing I'd say is, what is mitigation and why do we do it? Just so you have some background. Some of you have been around and seen some of this, but mitigation in general is any sustained action to reduce the loss of life and property by lessening the impact of future disasters. That's the broad general definition. Why we would do it and why we're asked to do it is a FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan must be adopted as a condition of receiving any future funding for mitigation projects under pre-disaster and post-disaster grant programs that are administered by Federal Emergency Management Agency. Mitigation planning in general is identifying hazards that may impact us, natural hazards that may impact us, and identifying actions to reduce losses from those known hazards. It also establishes a coordination and implementation process. And that's one of the key things, not only for a small jurisdiction like us, but also City of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, Village of Tijeras, AMAFCA, MRGCD, and this year also the Water Utility Authority. So that was the planning basis, or the entities involved in this regional planning effort. That's an expansion over 2015, and significantly over 2007, which is kind of the baseline mitigation plan year. This is a nationwide requirement under the so-called DMA 2K, which is the Disaster Mitigation Act of year 2000. The village has been an active participant with approved plans in 2007, where we were just a mention in a Bernalillo County plan. 2015, where we had a much more active role and significant amount of committed activities. In general, why a jurisdiction, why mitigation is important. Just roughly, we all know disasters are destructive and they're disruptive and they cost a lot of money, and it's getting worse, not better. But it is widely held that mitigation investment has about a 6-to-1 return on investment. Any dollar spent is known to reduce cost of disaster on a 6-to-1 basis. And you shouldn't ask me for the exact numbers on those, but it is widely held within the community. What's in the plan? Here's a slight mea culpa. We put the entire draft plan in the December packet, and we were on the December agenda for approval. We did not put the entire plan in this packet because it went from somewhere in the neighborhood of 360 pages, which was an entire bear for these guys to try and put in the packet, to 535 pages. And the additional pages were simply the record of all of the public input, the survey results, various things that were involved in the process of this plan development. So that's the mea culpa. What's in the plan is in summary in your packet, and that's the executive summary. Just quickly, and okay, so it is showing. You can see the entities that were involved: the county, the city, us, Harris, MAFCA, MRGCD, and the Water Utility Authority. Over the course of those months, with the expert guidance of Wood, we reviewed the previous plan. That's one of the most important things to do. Reviewed the hazards and our ratings of the hazards from the perspective of our perceived risk and priority. We reviewed the actions that we all committed to in 2015 and made some adjustments. Either they were completed or they were removed or just simply updated and carried forward. So the plan is laid out fairly simply: the introduction with the executive summary. Each of the communities or entities are profiled in Chapter 2. That's a lot of demographics, various maps of hazard areas, so you get to know the different entities involved in the plan. We are highlighted beginning on page 22. And then the third chapter is a description of the planning process, which includes a description of the public participation and the stakeholder involvement, the initial review by the state, a state-federal joint review, feedback to the planning team, and then final review, and what we have currently, which is approval pending adoption. The plan has been approved by our federal counterparts and our state counterparts as of the 22nd of December, which is a great accomplishment. And the only thing that keeps it from being final is adoption by all of the governing bodies of the participating entities. The fourth chapter is really the meat and potatoes. It's quite long. That is the hazard identification and risk assessment. Again, mapping, hazard description, scientific data on 14 natural hazards, which are listed on the table. And Danielle, I don't know if you want to slide for the audience, but the table covers the 14 natural hazards that we have covered within the plan, plus 2, the active threat and cyber threat, which were added primarily by the city of Albuquerque for inclusion in this plan. The overall hazard rankings in this table is just the highest level of where we as planning team members laid our subjective concern. And so that's what you see in this table. Each of those are laid out in great detail, somewhere in the neighborhood of 220 pages for each, in total, for each of the hazards listed there. And one table that you don't have is our specific table of our rankings for frequency, spatial extent, severity, and overall ranking, which comes onto this table with this overall ranking. We have carried forward drought, earthquake, flood, severe winter storm, and wildfire as our highest overall significance. And some people ask the question, earthquake really?
Yeah.
And the answer is unlikely. It's a low probability, high hazard event. And while the likelihood, the probability is relatively low, the spatial extent and the damages would be catastrophic and life-changing. So that's why it's in our realm. We live on the Rio Grande Rift and we live on sandy soil. So that's always one that raises a little bit of a flag. The 5th chapter is capability assessment, and that's just generally our community's capacity to implement this plan. And it's just brief descriptions of that. And the 6th chapter is the next big piece of meat and potatoes, and that is the goals, measures, and actions that we say we will undertake if the opportunity exists. And that's more or less, it's an aspirational, strategic level, visionary type plan. If you think in terms of like a master plan, it's very much like a master plan process. I want to make very clear to each of you that the adoption of this plan does not obligate the village in any way, financially or otherwise. It's strictly a periodic expression of our strategic values and understanding of the hazards we could face. And with that, then some understanding of what damages may occur, financial and otherwise, impacts may occur. So it's very much strategic and does not obligate, especially financially, in any way, shape, or form. And my closing would be that the village, and that's over here, the village in 2015, we listed out 35 actions, and these are things anywhere from ordinances to clearing of brush to major construction projects, hardening of facilities, it's that sort of thing, a full range to address each of the hazards through either being completed or deleted or updated. We are now at 24, so from 35 to 24. Everybody kind of narrowed a little bit to really narrow the focus. 2015 was maybe heady times and very aspirational. It's still heady times, but a lot more reality-based, I think, in this version. And of those 24, I wanted to highlight one in particular. It's something that the mayor in particular has been interested in, and that is levee failure, flooding of the area, potential. And so we put a levee failure exercise into our actions list, and then we said, heck, why don't we do it now?
Yes. And we did.
Because there was no point in waiting when the iron was hot. And so we had a vastly successful levee exercise in September. The participation from congressional representation, state, local, all the stakeholders on the levee. Really fantastic meeting. And one of the results from that was the acclamation that the old levee task force be reconstituted. So that's the sort of thing that you get benefit just by identifying, talking, and aspiring to things. And that's one of the key actions in our plan of the 24. And there are others related to public education campaigns, 4th Street drainage, wildfire mitigation, variety of different things, electricity that are in the plan. And like I said, in closing, like I said, the opportunity to review the entire plan in your packet, we removed, and it's just this January and COVID and various things. You would have the option, without any pain to anyone, to defer the adoption of the resolution until you've had a chance to have your eyes go buggy for looking at 535 pages, or you can adopt it on the faith of your staff and your mayor and our diligence over the last 2 years. But I will stand for any questions.
So with that, I would need a motion and a second before I open it for discussion. I need a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the hazard mitigation plan. Is that?
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, at this time, is there any discussion from the governing body? I will make this statement. I've been involved with hazard mitigation plans my entire 40-plus year career as a professional engineer. And I have to tell you that this particular plan may be the best one I've ever seen. Honestly, all the effort that went into it, the focus, especially the focus on the levees that we put in there and that we have followed through with, is outstanding. There's no question about it. And Jeff, I want to thank you. I want to thank you personally for being involved in this hazard mitigation planning effort, for doing all of the real grunt work when it came to putting the levee safety study together that we had in September. So I think we've made great progress. So let me open it up. Any discussion or questions from the governing body?
Yeah. I have a question for you. So I'm looking at table 1-1, and I did chuckle when I saw earthquake on there for Los Ranchos. But a couple of things. You said we are not financially obligated to do anything, but to me this relates a lot to public safety, and it seems like we have a responsibility to do something if there's a high hazard. So I don't know. Do you agree with that? I mean, anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Well, I'll weigh in on it. The hazard mitigation plan presents the hazards and other really significant documentation. Depending upon which hazard you're talking about, and the levees are the perfect example.
Yeah.
The levees were built many, many years ago. Yeah. If they fail, not only will the village of Los Ranchos be flooded, because we're in the floodplain, the entire Middle Rio Grande all the way down south will be flooded. So, but we don't have $100 million to fix the levees. So what we're doing is we're going to our legislature, going to the governor, asking for significant funding to make sure that the Army Corps of Engineers can continue with its studies, and also to utilize the engineering community to help us identify, how much water would actually be, flooding you and I and everybody who lives in the Middle Valley. So while it's true it doesn't obligate the village, but the village does have an obligation to try to solve the problem.
Okay.
So that's the best answer I can give you, Trustee.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so let me follow up on that. So the levee example is a great example.
Yes.
And so let's pick one more example.
Sure.
Drought.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are concerned about drought here in the village of Los Ranchos, given all the agricultural. And,
exactly.
What might we do to mitigate that? If the answer is conservation, use less water.
There's a better answer. There's a better answer. We know that next year is going to be a pretty bad year for delivery of water from the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. So what my staff is doing, pretty much at my direction, we're looking for water rights. We're going to drill a well at the Agri-Nature Center, and we have enough funding in our budget to be able to make this happen. So, yes, there's no obligation, but quite frankly, we don't want our investment at the Agri-Nature Center to just go away and die because there's not going to be any water delivered from the acequias and the ditches middle of May. So I don't know if that kind of answers the question. While we may not have a direct obligation, the drought, the levees, and that sort of thing is in fact very important to us. So we're going to make the effort to do these things.
So we,
As a village.
governing board.
And Ann, you might tell him about the $500,000. Tell him about the water rights that we have in our budget.
Yes, Mayor and Trustee Benavides, we have set aside $500,000 of our Rescue Act funds to purchase water rights. And we currently have a person who is, we're getting on contract to actually go out and find some water rights for us to purchase.
And to follow up on that, another factor that's very important, the American Rescue Act gave the village $1.5 million for, and there was a lot of guidance in that Rescue Act about what you could use it for. And so we had the latitude to be able to take at least that money from the Rescue Act, which was never a part of our budget to begin with, and put it into this water right acquisition because we want to have enough water to preserve our property if this drought lasts another 2, 3, 4 years.
So how about a privately owned property within the village of Los Ranchos? I mean, if the village is purchasing water rights, how do you distribute that to the residents, or is it just for village-owned property?
Now, Nan Winder, you might want to pipe in on this. There is an anti-donation, correct? So I think that would be the problem with, so go ahead. Here we go.
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, yeah, the water rights would not be acquired for distribution. Water rights would be owned by the village. The village cannot donate those to private citizens.
Just can't do it.
And Mr.
So that does not help the village residents that have private property that need to
Let me
irrigate.
offer this. As an engineer, and I know that, George, you've seen some of this in your work. At the end of the day, the city water comes from the water authority. Depending upon what kind of property you have, you may have to cut your water use back significantly. It's basically water conservation. Trustee Radnovich, you've had to deal with this, over a number of years. So it's like fallowing fields, for example. If a farmer has fields and there's no water, you have to fallow the field.
You know what, and unfortunately, our beautiful tall cottonwood trees in our pastures will not survive on drip irrigation.
Well, hopefully the roots are deep enough and they're in the groundwater. And so that's what saves most of what we have, but it may not save all of it. I mean, you bring up a great point.
Yeah.
We're in a dangerous time when it comes to the drought. We really are.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, Mayor, Trustee Benavides, a little further on drought, it's an interesting one, of course. With regard to the mitigation realm, the approach we have here is 3 items in our actions list. One is to be ongoing participants in the state drought management work group. Another is working closely with the Water Utility Authority on conservation programs. And a third one is related to mitigating leaks. And it's all together. First thing is identify there's a problem. And this is a societal global problem, certainly a Southwest problem. 2, once you've identified it, what can we do within the realm of our municipality? And that's what's expressed in the mitigation plan, as opposed to zeroing it out or not claiming any interest in that issue. We do, clearly. And one of the reasons we are high and others are not is because of our nature, because of our master plan, because of our community nature.
Correct.
So again, in terms of obligation, the plan, and this is just from a municipal standpoint, the plan and adopting the plan does not obligate a single dollar. It sets up for potential in the future to be able to be eligible for funds. We would not be eligible for funds under any of the FEMA programs, which are vast and getting more vast, without an approved plan. To go without an approved plan, which some municipalities around the country do because they just kind of thumb their nose, is to cut off the nose to spite the face. And we've been active participants, and I don't believe we've drawn down mitigation-specific monies, but every time there's a disaster declared by the president in the state of New Mexico, we are eligible, even if it wasn't our disaster. We are eligible for post-disaster grant funds, and we can only apply and draw down those with our partners if we have a plan.
That's correct.
So that's a big key going forward. There's an anecdote about potential mitigation project. I always forget the name of it, the Montano Gap, with the Montano project
Yeah,
that
the levy.
failed to be implemented because of a failure to get the planning bodies together and draw down money that was already ready to be handed. This is several years ago, and it was a jurisdictional thing and so that's one of the issues that's being clarified and worked on with the levy task force, is who can be a good fiscal agent, who can be supporting entities to make the application process actually succeed when these monies become available. Especially with that anecdote in the very recent history, it was very frustrating to everybody involved to watch that money be deobligated and sent elsewhere.
So thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
I'll add this. I've known about this problem for a long time. And so what I decided to do was take a leadership role to make sure that, because even though this problem was out of sight and out of mind to everybody, it's not a problem that's ever going to go away. Because if you get a significant flood, either in the drainage areas to the east, between Cochiti Dam and here, or flows from the spillway over Cochiti Dam, any of those three could literally have catastrophic.
As it did at one time. Yeah.
Of course. I mean, you can go back in history, 150 years. There was a flow in this river in 1876 of 150,000 cubic feet per second. That water, if it flows into Cochiti Dam and there happens to be a high reservoir level in the dam, it'll go over the spillway, and that's uncontrolled. You can't do anything about it. It'll wash the levees out, and it'll put 10 feet of water at my house. So that's the kind of problem that you have to deal with. So even though it may be out of sight and out of mind, it's still there. So let me follow up. Is there any further discussion from the governing body?
Mayor, I'd like
Go
to ask a question and also mention a few things. One is about drought.
Sure.
Drought will never go away.
It'll never
It's not going to
go
go
away.
away in 3 years.
I don't think it's gonna go away.
It's never gone away in my lifetime.
You're right.
So I think we need to do everything we can as a village to mitigate that.
I do
And I'd take it further than just conservation. I would say that we also need to work on a plan, and maybe Tiffany can do this at some point. I know she's a very busy person, and so are you, Ann, for stormwater harvesting and green stormwater infrastructure.
Of course.
We try to do that with, in other parts of the city and other parts of the state, and I think it's really important for us as well as part of that conservation effort and
I
to
like
increase
that.
those conservation
I
efforts.
like that a lot. Thank you, sir.
The other thing I was going to do is ask a question, Mayor.
Sure, go right
And
ahead.
this is a question for you, Jeff. Dam failure, is that only, and Mayor, you probably know the answer to
I know
this.
too much about that.
Is that just the big dams like Cochiti Dam, or is that also the levees and even the small levees on the acequias?
We included the levy aspect under that category because the categories are more recognized at a more global level. And our levy conversation and our levy actions are directly under that category. So, and also the description of the hazard, that long section, section 4, that's where the levy is addressed, the levies are addressed.
Jeff, what about the levees or the berms on the sides of the acequias? And the drain for that matter?
I'm not sure if we directly addressed those. Much of the information came from our flood fighting and the district, MRGCD. Much of the description of the issue and the mapping and the inundation mapping came from those two entities, but they are included within the description of the potential hazard, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion from the governing body? Okay.
Just want to say thank you, Jeff. That was outstanding.
Outstanding. Thank you, Jeff. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Item C, discussion and approval of resolution number 2022-01-04, a resolution accepting the approval of a celebration permit. Administrator Simon.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, trustees. Before you is a resolution to accept a permit to vend alcohol on village property. The event is a matanza at the Agri-Nature Center, and vendors will be required to comply with all state rules governing the sale of alcohol. 2 vendors have been listed in your packet, Kelly Joe Design by Wine and Hops Brewery. I stand for questions.
Let me have a motion in a second, then I'll open it for discussion. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-01-04.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion from the governing body or questions?
I have a question, Mayor.
Go right ahead, sir.
So, and I wasn't able to see this in any of our packet. What is the celebration for exactly?
It's the matanza.
Right?
And the matanza is an event at the Agri-Nature Center that we are trying to do community-type events that highlight basically what the Agri-Nature Center is all about.
I see.
And so it's supposed to be a fun event, but as Administrator Simon said earlier, we're going to use that event to try to solicit some feedback, to help us with agritourism. Am I correct, Administrator Simon?
Correct, Mayor.
Okay. All right,
Excellent.
okay.
I think, one comment more than a question, Mayor and Ann. I think that that matanza could be extended beyond just the Agri-Nature Center in the future, and that there could be connections to Hartnett Park, there could be connections to and maybe you've already thought of this, Big Jim Farms and a number of other agri-tourism industry, I'll say, in the village. So I can see down the road how that could really be expanded and turn into a much more celebratory kind of matanza.
We had that same discussion and conversation at our Agri-Futures meeting. And so we're looking down the road at similar, ideas that you've just brought up, okay? Benavides.
Yes, how will this celebration be advertised, and is it open to just village residents or outside the village?
No, but Ann Simon, I think you have an answer,
Yes.
possible answer to that.
Mayor, trustees, Trustee Benavides, as we discussed when Trustee Pacheco, asked earlier, we have purchased Facebook ads. We will be posting it on our website and our Village Vision. Actually, take it back. We are not going to be posting it in our Village Vision magazine because the deadline has passed. But we will be putting it on our Facebook, on our social media pages, and then through all of our partners who are participating in the event, we are asking them to post it on their social media. And really, that seems to be the best way to advertise these kinds of events.
Well, I mean, you could put a sign right there at the Agri-Nature Center, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Is it open, who is it open to?
The public.
The public? The general public? Residents, people outside the village and whoever wants to come.
Mayor, yes.
Okay.
Trustee.
Okay.
Mayor, are we going to have a pig?
Well, there's going to be pig meat. Now, let me say this, we haven't gotten to the point of having the matanza where you actually have the pig and you put it in other words, it's actually going to be prepared. There are food permits, so we have to be very, very careful about that. So, this was something that we thought about for quite a while, but this will be a learning process. I can tell you that right now. I don't think there's any question about that.
And is this going to be called the Los Ranchos Matanza?
Well, of
Is
course
that
it
the name?
is. Of course, of course. Okay, any further discussion or questions from the governing body? Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
D, discussion and approval to advertise ordinance number 285, an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Article 1 of the Village of Los Ranchos Codified Ordinances regarding business registration and licensing, amending Chapter 9, Article 3 of the Village of Los Ranchos Codified Ordinances requiring permit for the sale, construction, and remodeling of property. Administrator Simon.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, trustees. Before you is a request to advertise amendments to the Village of Los Ranchos Code relating to the Los Ranchos Art Market and parcel permits for contractors. The ordinance clarifies the sponsorship and permitting of vendors at the Los Ranchos Art Market and changes the parcel permit requirement for contractors to an annual business license. What we're finding is a couple of issues. First, regarding the art market. Currently, the art market is sponsored by the Village Agriculture Committee. So we are amending that language to sort of extricate the art market from village business, as they are their own entity, and we have a separate agreement with the art market to operate on village property on a weekly basis. On the contractor's permit, the issue is that the village issues parcel permits to realtors and contractors. Realtors must obtain a parcel permit for each property they sell, and they're given a yellow sign to attach to their sign. Contractors must obtain a parcel permit for each construction job they do in Los Ranchos. And only those jobs longer than 3 months are issued a yellow sign. Most communities require contractors to have a single business license with the jurisdiction for whom they're doing their work. And our current requirement penalizes the contractors who do multiple jobs in Los Ranchos. So we're trying to clean up this language and make it easier for contractors. We'll issue one contractor's license versus a parcel permit for every job. And that is my summary. I can go into more detail, but I'll stand for questions.
Okay, before we get to discussion and questions, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to advertise ordinance number 285.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions from the governing body at this time? Okay, is there any, go ahead, go right ahead.
And is the price of the annual permit the same as the price was for the multiple permits?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, the annual license fee is $35. We don't collect that much more revenue, and part of it is because contractors are not wanting to do multiple jobs in the village because of this sort of double taxation, if you will.
Thank you. I have another question. Is the same approach hold true for the growers market?
I don't think so.
Sorry, Mayor and Trustee Radnovich, each vendor If they don't already have a permit with, a business permit with the Village of Los Ranchos, they pay $20 per year to be a special market vendor at the market. Just the art market, not the growers.
So similar, but a little bit lower for the growers market.
Correct.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion from the governing body? Go ahead.
No.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Apparently not. Call for the question. Call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Okay. E, discussion and approval to advertise ordinance number 286, an ordinance revising Chapter 2 of the Codified Ordinances amending Sections 5 and 6 pertaining to the compensation of the mayor and trustees. I will be making a presentation, and then we'll have a motion, a second, then open it for discussion. The historical perspective of this kind of thing occurs about once every 20 years. In the 1980s, the salary of the mayor was established as $500 per month. The minimum wage at that time in New Mexico was a little over $2 an hour, like $2.10 or something like that. So at that time, the mayor's salary was a little bit more than the minimum wage. In 2003, the governing body approved the ordinance that exists today, where the mayor's salary is $12,000 a year, and this is my pay stub, $5.77 an hour. So the minimum wage was $5.15 in 2003. So it's gone up in the 19 years. But the most important aspect of this is these compensations do not affect anybody on this governing body. Only newly elected officials, which means there will not be any increase for a newly elected mayor or newly elected trustees until 2024. So, as near as I can tell, from what I understand, the minimum wage in New Mexico has just gone up to $11.50 an hour. So the pay rate for the mayor is half of that. The governor in the Santa Fe New Mexican is asking for $15 an hour for state employees. And I'm told by the people in Santa Fe that that will probably pass. I don't think there's any question in my mind that it will be $15 an hour in 2024. Now, if this doesn't occur, and this governing body chooses not to do this, there will not be an increase until 2028, which would be 25 years from now. That seems very unreasonable and very unfair. So I'd like to have a motion and then a second, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So I need a motion.
Let's see, I don't know how to word the motion. Somebody else do it.
It can be worded in any way, shape, or form.
So I make a motion to, for the discussion and approval to advertise ordinance 286. Yes.
Okay, I need a second. Then without a second, this dies, okay?
Mayor,
Can we discuss it before it dies, or
Well,
do?
under Robert's rules, if there isn't a second, it dies. So we have to have a second. Now, you can vote it down, after the discussion. But under Robert's rules, if you don't have a second, it dies.
Okay, I will second it, Mayor.
Okay, now, it's the governing body's turn to have questions and discussion. So it's open. So who has a question?
I'll be glad to start.
Sure.
I think these amounts are way too much.
Okay.
I know, Mr. Mayor, you put in a lot of time. I know a lot of previous mayors. It's been a part-time
Sure.
work for them, and I think the same thing for trustees. In looking at the report that Danielle passed around, I think our mayor is well compensated
Okay.
based on other communities.
Okay.
I would support this ordinance if it was for a 10 or 15% increase in the mayor's
I
salary.
see.
And for the trustees, you know, I'd give them, you know, 20%, which is about another $10 a month. These were always been positions, you know. I mean, when I started out as a trustee, you got reimbursed for out-of-pocket per diem.
Well, it was $50.
It was $50, and then we had to change it to a salary.
Okay.
And I mean, it's something that I always like to kid about, but I think, you know, I tell people all the time I do this for the money because the money's so good. You know, but they, you know, when you take the taxes out, it's sort of fun to get your $100 every quarter. And I think people primarily serve this village for their love of the village. And so I would not want to see it become positions that people think are gonna make, you know, they're gonna live their whole life off that position and how much it pays. And I just think the amounts are too much. And so I can't support it at these amounts.
Okay, any further discussion?
Mayor, I do have a question. You said that there is a time frame involved with increasing the mayor's and the trustees' salaries.
Yes.
Can you explain that
Yes.
a little further?
No member who is on the governing body gets this increase. It's only members who are elected in the future. So for example, in November 2023, there will be a mayoral election and 2 trustees will be elected. Those trustees, if this were to pass, would then get this salary in 2024. But the 2 members who just came in can't get it. So it has to be members who are reelected. So 2 new members, the 2 of you, wouldn't get it till 2026. I would like Nan Winter to advise us about the difference between the way our village and other villages like us, our form of government is quite different from some of these other towns who have a city manager. Do you want to dive into that, Nan, so that everybody understands the whole thing?
Sure, Mayor. Mayor, trustees, first regarding the timing, there's a constitutional prohibition against voting yourself a pay raise.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. So in other words, this was actually on the December agenda. Had it been passed in December, Mr. Radnovich and Mr. Benavides would have been paid more than you all.
Right.
But circumstances what they were, it is now on this agenda, and you cannot vote yourself a pay raise. So
Right.
no matter what, this only applies to the next sitting elected official in your seat.
Right.
Okay? So the mayor's correct, it only applies in 2024 at the earliest. There are about 5 different types of governing bodies in New Mexico. One is a commission manager form of government, one's a council manager form of government, one is a council mayor form of government, another is a home rule municipality. By far the largest proportion of those is council mayor form of government, and the council, the mayor in a council mayor form of government is by statute, it's 3-11-1 and 3-12-1 of the New Mexico statutes. The mayor is the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer, the chief HR officer. The mayor signs every contract, he hires every employee, he fires every employee. And the evidence of that was presented at the organizational part of our meeting this morning, or this afternoon. In other words, this mayor has a completely different role than Mayor Keller. And even if there were a mayor council form of government in another part of the state, I think village is different. Village of Los Ranchos is different because you are a village, a mayor council form of government, completely surrounded by an urban area. So in that way, there's a lot more on your plate, all of you, honestly. And like we discussed with cannabis, you crafted cannabis the way you wanted to craft cannabis based on the character of your village. And this issue, compensation, is unique to each village, each town, each city. So, you know, this is, again, a policy call, obviously, that's in front of you. But it would be hard to compare yourself to Messia it would be hard to compare yourself to Aztec or Bloomfield, and those are your peer groups, honestly, in terms of size. But none of them are surrounded by the urbanity that you're surrounded by. So, does that answer the question, Mayor?
Yes, it does, and I think that one more thing. This issue was brought to me by former Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Pablo Rael. He came to me several months ago and said that he didn't think it was right that the trustees only got $50 a meeting. He said it was almost laughable, really. And I remember a discussion with the late Mayor Larry Abraham. He talked about the mayor's salary, I hate to say this, but in disgust. He actually thought it was absurd. And so, but then again, the late Mayor Larry Abraham, had his own style and everything else, so we never brought it up. During the 14 years that he was mayor, this did not come up. But it's come up about every 20 years. So here we are at the 20-year mark. So we can go 24, we can go 28. It'll be a future mayor and governing body that'll have to make the decision whether or not it stays like it is. Getting back to loving the village. Nobody loves the village more than I do. I've lived here my whole life. I grew up in the old Los Ranchos. I've served as an elected official in this village for 30 years. 30 years this year. To me, it's just unfair. But that's the bottom line. The governing body gets to make the decision. That's the bottom line, okay? Go ahead.
May I say something?
Of course.
So, yeah, I mean, I think former trustee Pablo Real is right. The $50, you should either do away with it or make it so that it has some value, because it's a lot of effort for $50. Including effort to deal with it on your taxes, right?
Of course.
But here's my take on paying people for public office. Even the salaries that we're talking about here they're not huge salaries in that somebody can say, this is my only job, this is my primary income producing job. So a lot of people, it would be like a second job. However, if you don't care about the money, then it's probably because you have plenty of money anyway.
That's right.
And so we may be eliminating some potential people that might say, hey, instead of the second job that I'm doing, maybe they're a high school teacher, for example, right? And maybe to make ends meet, they need a second job, but they can't do this job because they need a little more income.
Sure.
So I think we open it up to more people running for elected office if we pay a compensation that has some appeal to it. So that's my take on it.
Okay, any further discussion or questions from the governing body?
I have a few questions, Mayor.
Of course.
One is, this happens every 20 years?
It doesn't, it's not mandated.
I see.
It can happen anytime.
I see.
But it has happened every 20 years.
I see.
And it just so happens that the salaries were rounded off, so that's why they were above the minimum wage. $500 was more than $2.10 an hour times 2,080 hours. $5.77 was 62 cents more than the $5.15 that was the minimum wage. So when the late mayor, Larry Abraham, became mayor, he was earning the minimum wage at that time.
Yeah.
But it goes up. So 20 years later, it's going to be more. Mm-hmm. That's really the issue of fairness, in my opinion.
So if I were running the village like a business, I would at least increase those salaries by a cost of living amount.
Of course.
So I guess, how did we get to this figure? If we added the 2 to 3% cost of living per year.
For 20 years?
For 20 years, what would that be?
Well, that would be 60%. That's what it would be. But I don't really know. I mean, I'd have to do some calculations. Somebody would have to do a calculation to say from 2003 to 2024, what has the cost of living been? I can tell you that the cost of construction has gone up way beyond 3% a year. That's been 5, 7, 8%. My gut feeling is that over a 20-year period, it's doubled. It probably has doubled. I think there's no question about it. And I think that's the reason why government is saying the minimum wage is what it has to be, and that's why they keep increasing it every year. That's my opinion, anyway.
My first job was $1.65 an hour.
Yes.
And it was in the village, in the 1970s.
Wow.
And I would support an increase in the mayor's salary if it were closer, and I don't know what the numbers are, I'm not going to figure it out tonight, but if it were closer to, at the very least, a cost of living
Over a 20-year
increase
period?
over that 20-year period.
That can be calculated. It certainly can.
Is this something that could be deferred?
Of course it can be deferred.
So I would be supportive of something like that. I totally agree with what Trustee Lewis said. I'm doing this because I love the village. I've lived and worked in the village for 28 years, not my whole life. But I do think I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for, because I want to help improve what the village is, who it is,
Exactly.
and how it's perceived by others and where it's going. And so I would be supportive of an increase, but I'd sure like to know how it compares maybe to other cities and towns like Nan mentioned, Aztec and so forth, but also based on cost of living kinds of
Well, let me
raises.
offer this comment, because the town of Mesilla really is the closest example to what the village is like. It's adjacent to the bigger Las Cruces. Their mayor makes $30,000 a year. Their trustees make $8,000 a year. For some reason, the southern part of New Mexico seems to have looked at this a little differently, because Sunland Park, the mayor gets $25,000 a year and the trustees get $8,400 a year. So I'm not sure why the southern part of New Mexico is operating like that. But any one of the governing members of the members of the governing body can also amend the motion to either defer or however you want to do it. That's on the table. So if one of you decides, whoever made the motion wants to amend it, you have that option. So I'll leave it at that.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Sure.
So I too am supportive, but when we got a chance to look at the information about other communities and what they're doing, we certainly don't want to do something that is way off what other communities are doing. I don't think that would do us justice, and I think it would call a lot of attention, to the whole situation. I again am supportive of an increase. I think we need to do some more work.
Sure.
On figuring out what that would be.
Of course. Of course.
So I made
I
the
would
motion.
agree with that statement. I mean, I think Trustee Benavides made a good point. We don't want people to be excluded. I don't think the mayor's position, and maybe it's becoming that, I've never been a mayor, but it was never intended and has never been a 40-hour-a-week job. And neither is a trustee, Maybe we're getting $10 an hour for 5 or 6 hours we're putting in. But I think, we can't look at them as, hey, we want these to be full-time jobs, because that's not what they were ever intended to be.
That's true.
And so I agree with some increase. May I borrow this?
Absolutely.
But I sit here, it's all over the board in Mexico, because here's the city of Artesia that's twice the size of the village, and the mayor makes $800 a month.
That's because they have a city manager.
Well, we have an administrator.
Well, I know that, but
And
she's still not a city manager. City manager is a different form of government.
Well, I still think we've got
I understand.
staff, we've
I
got the
understand.
staff of people.
I do understand.
And I used to argue with Larry, because at times I think he ran the village too tight, and we needed to add some people.
Sure.
But I think one of the biggest things we can guard against as trustees is the financial soundness of this village. And one of the easiest places for it to leak, and as you mentioned with a business, all of a sudden, how did my payroll get up to here? And how did we get this many employees? And so I think we have a real responsibility to look at this further. I'm not opposed to, I mean, I'm disappointed that I won't get the $10 a month for 2 more years. But I'll explain it to my wife. But, I do think it warrants some increase, but I couldn't agree with these numbers at all.
Okay.
So how do we do this? I made the motion,
You
so I can
your
amend
motion.
it.
You can amend it.
I mean, it sounds like what we want to do is to defer it, right?
correct.
So does that mean we kill the motion first and then make a new
You
motion?
amend your motion and request a deferral. I ask for a second,
Okay,
and then we open it up for discussion again, the public, and then finally we vote.
so
amend your
do it when if I amend it for a deferral, do I have to give a time frame?
You don't.
Okay,
No, there's 2 years to go.
Okay.
There's 2 years left in my term, and you have 4 years, and there's 2
Yeah.
years left in your term. So we have a lot of time, really.
so I
Awful
amend,
lot of time.
I amend my motion to defer, as a deferral.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
I have a second with findings.
Yes.
I'd like to know, just to make an informed decision, how an increase would compare to other cities and also to the cost of living over the time period when this amount was last
Of course.
instituted.
So we have an amended motion, and we now have a second. Is there any discussion from the governing body about that? Okay. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Please come forward. Joe Craig.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees.
You bet.
Joe Craig, 505 Calle del Pajarito Northwest. I didn't anticipate speaking on this matter, but I agree with you, Mayor. Our village has ramped up in the past decade or more. We, as a community, demand a lot from our trustees, a lot from our mayor. I think we originally set up our village to protect us from urbanization of the city of Albuquerque. But our budget is what now? 2 million?
9 million.
9 million. You know, I mean, this is a substantial business village. I want things out of you. I want things out of the trustees, out of our village administrator. And I'm not unusual. And I think it's a very demanding job. Our cost of living is frightening. I'd like to buy a new pickup, but it scares me to death. You know, $80,000, $90,000 for a truck is crazy, let alone our housing. So our basic cost of living is high. Our demands on our trustees and on our mayor are extremely high. And, you know, I think Larry Abraham put a lot of time. I know you are putting a tremendous amount of talent into our village. I would support the increase for the mayor. I would support even more of an increase for the trustees. I don't think that's enough. So this is me personally. We haven't spoken in our neighbors, but we want response from you guys. And if we limit our pool of people that can actually afford to do this, I know this doesn't make any difference as far as salary to you guys, but potentially down the road, we may have people that we want to serve that financially can't do it. And this is a question that we're getting throughout the country, not just in the village of Los Ranchos, not just New Mexico. It's something we need people to step up and serve. And I want to thank all of you for what you have done, what you guys have done, what you guys are doing. This is a lot of work, and I know. So anyway, I do support it. I would support more for the trustees.
Thank you, Joe. Good comments. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Okay, being done, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote. We have the amended motion in a second. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Okay, item F. recommendation by the Evaluation Committee of Award for the Request for Proposals, RFP 2021-11-01, Farming and Agriculture Services, authorizing the mayor to begin contract negotiation between the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque with the following firm: Southwest Soil Health, LLC. Administrator Simon.
Mayor and trustees, thank you. On pages 106 and 110 of your packet, you will find a brief synopsis and scoring sheets for RFP number 2021-11-01, a request for proposals for farming and agriculture services. The village's intent was to select one firm to provide farming and agricultural services for certain lands owned by the village. The RFP was issued on Monday, November 15th, and closed the end of the business day on Friday, December 10th. The dates of publication and the method of advertisement are listed on your summary sheet in the packet. The RFP was posted on the village website for accessibility during the open period, as well as hard copies, which were also made available for pickup at Village Hall. The village received 3 proposals. The firms are listed on your sheet in alphabetical order. On Wednesday, December 15, 2021, the 5-person committee met, evaluated, and scored the firms based on the criteria set forth listed on pages 15 through 18 of the RFP. The names of the committee members are not listed to provide anonymity from potential retribution from a firm that may not have been selected. 2 rating tabulation sheets are in the packet. One is by average points, the other is total points based on the 5 evaluators' individual scores. The committee is recommending the award to the following firm: Southwest Soil Health, LLC. The village would like to thank all the offerers for their time and effort in submitting their professional proposals. The action item before you is requesting your approval to authorize the mayor to begin contract negotiations with the selected firm. I stand for questions.
Before we get to questions and discussion, I need a motion.
I would make a motion to have the mayor start forward in support of this RFP and the winner of it, RFP number 2021-11-01.
I need a second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, at this time, are there any discussion or questions from the governing body?
I do have questions,
Of
Mayor.
course.
What are the services provided with this contract? And
would
to
you like
where?
Answer that question. Josh is not here right now, so
Yes, thank you. I think I can answer them, Mayor. Mayor, Trustee Pacheco. We have asked that the farmer be both a farmer and a manager of the property of the Del Norte open space. This is not to provide farm services at the Agri-Nature Center or at the Edgewood Park or any of our other facilities. It's only to farm and manage the property north of Paseo del Norte, west of 4th Street.
And when did the current management of that space end? And I don't recall even hearing about this RFP, and I don't know that we as trustees would, other than it being presented today. But I'm just curious.
I can try to add a comment on that, and then I'll let you follow up, Ann. This property was being managed by a farmer by the name of David Montoya since about 2008. However, in about 2018, we have not had a lease, correct? So, Nan Winter, you can pipe in here. We can't go on forever without a lease. Tell us what the law says.
Mayor, trustees, so looking back at Mr. Chappell's files, it looked like there was a lease executed with Alameda Farms in 2007. It was for an 11-year term. It was awarded after an RFP. The term of that contract ended in 2018, and Anne, I think, has been working on an attempted renegotiation of that lease, but the negotiations weren't really working out. Regardless, state law requires that you RFP out periodically when you lease lands, and given that the last RFP was in the 2006-2007 timeframe, and given the failed renewal negotiations, the village decided to RFP, issue the request for proposals.
Okay, so that decision was just made recently?
When was it made, Ann? It's been a little while.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
When was the decision made? I guess when maybe current discussions fell apart, then it was decided that we would put the RFP out for.
Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, I have been researching this particular contract since I started in January of 2020. I know the procurement code pretty well. I relied on our procurement officer, Danielle Cedillo Molina, and our attorney, Nan Winter, to advise me on the legality of having a vendor for 11 plus 5 years. As far as I could research and find out, we had exceeded the timeframe by which we could extend a contract to one single vendor without going out to bid. This happens in government throughout the U.S., that no one vendor can have a lock on a contract or a service indefinitely.
Okay.
Eventually, you have to go out for bid, get new offers. That's about being fair and opening up the competitive process. We determined that we tried to extend for 1 year the contract just to have something on the books, but because of COVID and travel and other reasons, we never could lock into a 1-year contract. Then we rounded the corner to 2021, and we realized that we, at that point, were so far overdue that we were in jeopardy of getting an audit finding, and we didn't want to go there, and we didn't want to be in violation of the procurement code. So we started the decision probably midsummer to go out for a formal RFP for ag services.
Okay. And it was,
And Mayor, Trustee, it was my counsel to the mayor when I came on board that in 2019, when it first came to my attention, is that we probably needed to go to RFP right away. Because at that point, the contractor that was on the property was essentially in trespass, which is potentially an audit finding. That's not just village real estate either. Half of that is Department of Transportation real estate.
Right.
That we are under contract to maintain.
Right.
So you know somebody's paying attention, right? So it was my counsel to go to RFP immediately, in the alternative to enter into a short-term contract and then do an RFP. The ability, we never got the short-term contract done. And we probably should have issued the RFP a little sooner than we did, but.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes. So.
Thank you, Nan.
Okay.
thank you. Thanks.
I have some questions,
Right
Mayor.
ahead. Yes, sir.
My first question is, and some comments. My first question is, what is being farmed there? Is it alfalfa? Is it chilies? What is the contractor actually going to be growing?
And you,
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, so we can release the plan for the selected vendor. Currently, it's alfalfa and cattle. But the approach that was the winning approach was a more of a regenerative agriculture approach with keeping in mind limited water resources and impending drought.
Another question, Ann.
Yes.
Mayor. Is this all of the ponds between 4th Street and Rio Grande?
Not quite.
Mayor, yeah, Trustee Radnovich, the land stops at the large,
At the pedestrian bridge?
a little bit to the west of there is a large irrigation ditch.
Oh,
It goes all the way to
That's
the
where it
irrigation
where the
ditch.
siphon is.
It's 40 acres, correct? 40-something?
Correct.
It's a large piece of property.
Yeah, it is, Mayor. Are any of these contractors in the village? Are any of them village based?
I believe one of the proposers is village-based.
Are all of them metro area based?
Correct, yes.
Oh, yes.
It looks like you did a rigorous job of taking care of this, and I do like the approach of a more regenerative approach to taking care of that land, because it's going to make the land healthier. I do think that just because we're a village that has businesses, that there ought to be some points for a farmer that is from the village of Los Ranchos. I think that ought to be, and it may not be possible for this particular RFP, but that ought to be one of the judging factors, because we're helping village businesses if we do that. The other thing is, I would also suggest to the village that having numbers instead of the names of people on the committee is far and away different than any other place I've ever. We answer RFPs at my company, and I think that they ought to be named. They're named in every other municipality in the state that I've ever submitted RFP for, and I'll tell you that's a lot. So I don't really see a reason. No, I don't think anyone's going to. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but I don't understand why the village does that. I think it's wrong. I think there ought to be, because the reason is that firms that size up how to go after some kind of a job like this try to orient their proposals to the committee that is actually seeing the proposal, reading it, and listening to their case. And that limits the proposer in the village's case. So I think that's, and Mayor, you've probably seen the same thing with your business life, and maybe even Trustee Lewis and others. So
Let me offer this comment, George, because you're bringing up some really interesting points. I was advised by staff that I should not be on the selection committee, okay? So I have to speak and look at this from a different perspective.
Sure.
So thank you.
Absolutely, Mayor. Anyway, I think in the future for RFPs, we ought to consider some of those things. Familiarity with the village gets close, but if you're a village resident, I think there ought to be some kind of
Preference.
Yes, and the same goes for the team that judges. I think that's unfair to do that. So I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, any further discussion or questions from the governing body?
Yes, so this just allows the mayor to enter into negotiations.
That's correct.
And what if negotiations break down?
They can break down, they
And-
could break down.
What happens then?
Then we go out with another RFP. Or let me ask the procurement officer. Have you had to deal with this, Danielle? Tell us what you think.
No, we have, typically it works out with the recommended offer. Secondly, we can go to the second
Okay.
firm
Right.
That has been
Yes, so
recommended.
that's the answer.
And
We
if
can
that
go-
doesn't work, we can go on. However, the village does have the right to pull the RFP and then go back out for negotiation.
That's correct.
Another RFP.
That's correct.
So do I understand it correctly that there was an attempt made to negotiate with the current tenant?
Yes.
Okay.
Ann, do you agree with that? Nan, which one of you wants to answer that question?
Yes, absolutely, Mayor,
I think so.
trustees. Yeah, because we couldn't have an expired lease with a because you're then in trespass once you are, your lease has expired.
Right,
And so there had to be a good faith attempt to negotiate something.
right.
It's untenable to have a
And-
month-to-month lease.
And there was
especially
you didn't no agreement, you couldn't come to an agreement, apparently.
That's correct.
It's state-owned property.
Okay.
So, any further discussion or questions from the governing body? Okay, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Joe Craig, 505 Calle del Pajarito. Mayor, trustees. Mayor, I'd like to offer my condolences, by the way.
Thank you very much.
I didn't get a chance to do that earlier. And welcome to our new trustees. Thank you for your service. About 20 years ago, I appeared before this board and requested that we look at buying the Del Norte open space.
Right.
Myself, Shirley Green, our neighborhood led the drive to buy this. We then, at the request of the mayor and trustees, we formed the Friends of Los Ranchos. We lobbied, we went to the governor, we wrote articles. We acquired this gorgeous 50, I think it's 50 acres.
It's
And
40 plus, that's for
yes,
sure.
it's a substantial asset for the village of Los Ranchos.
Right.
We received $3 million from the governor's call. We received, I think, another $500,000 from Bernalillo County to buy the Miller's Feed property. That was the access.
Right.
And then we have a memorandum of understanding with the NMDOT for parcels on both the north side and the south side,
That's
which we
correct.
have. We've sort of ignored the south side. We have another 12 acres that I think we need to look at and farm. I guess I'm gonna have to file an IPRA to find out who's on the committee. I requested for our neighborhood and for the Friends of Los Angeles to be on this committee. I think we have a substantial investment ourselves, as well as the village of Los Ranchos. I don't understand the word retribution towards committee members. I don't know what that would be. I don't know who the companies are, other than David Montoya, because he has his name on there, that are submitting to our open space. And I have a very, not only vested interest, but we're very protective of this open space. It's clean, it has been well managed, as opposed to the Paseo del Norte, there is trash, and that's a function of the change in administration there and the funding. But this property is safe. My neighbors feel safe walking in it. And I walk it probably 3 times a week. I really would like to see, and I have no problem with a new lease. We need a lease. We need to manage this. I don't like having a farmer and a manager. I don't know why we have a manager at the Agri-Nature Center that doesn't manage our other property. I don't understand the concept of that, because it is a major agricultural asset. It is open space, and it was bought as open space. The Agri-Nature Center was bought as open space, and I'm going to keep hammering that because that's an important word for all of us.
Your time is up,
Okay.
Mr. Craig.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. One final request, I'd like to see a presentation on this. We can't see anything on the proposals. We don't know what is being proposed. This is an important property for the village. It's important for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Okay, is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Mr. Montoya.
My name's David Montoya, and I live at 517 Pueblo Solano. Some of the things that have said are not exactly correct. I did not have an RFP that I ever submitted for this property. It was included in the backdated 2010 agreement. They added one, so I never had to put in an RFP, number one. So that is just incorrect. Number two, we did not break down in our negotiations. None was actually ever given. Number three, if you look at the RFP is weird. There's about 5 different instances that say that different important aspects will be negotiated with the awardee, the one that's going to get the award. So how can you bid on something when many of the important aspects, even livestock on the property, is actually to be negotiated? So how can you pay more or do things? And I've already paid $139,000, as I mentioned earlier, because that's separate from this. But there's plenty of money that I've put out, and so I'm a little offended. And then to your point about regenerative, that's exactly what I do. We have property, I have put experimental plots in, paid for myself, that weren't even watered last year in one of our biggest drought years, and you got to go look at it. That's how nice it is. The roots grow down in this grama grass up to 5 feet, and I've measured them over 3. So some of these things aren't correct, and I really detest the fact that it's so secretive. Don't give people, like there's going to be retribution. Dave Montoya is going to come out there and there's going to be retribution for somebody that's on the committee. It's just weird. And then lastly, if you look at your points, they give the points to the board and they say, hey, we evaluated by the points. But if you look at the RFP, it says the village doesn't have to use the points. The low bidder, the high number points, does not have to be awarded. It's not necessary, but who the village wants. So it's a really secretive process. It doesn't look like the village. And I appreciate the fact that there's people here that aren't employees. I don't know who are the employees, but that were sit on this.
Your time is up, Mr. Montoya. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium and state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Pamela Montoya, 517 Pueblo Solano. Just to be clear, I don't know all of the specifics. I just overhear things that David's talking about to different people. What I understood was that he was approached by someone in the village and was asked to negotiate this new lease and pay $4,000 a year if he wanted to continue leasing this property. Because he has almost $150,000 into the property, if you were to divide it by the number of years that he's there, he's paid much more than the $4,000 a year that was asked of him. So I don't understand that part. It was said that it was a failed negotiation. If that failed negotiation was because he didn't want to pay $4,000, more in addition to the money he's already paid, which comes out to more than $4,000 a year, then, I don't understand how that's a failed negotiation. But I just want to say that I'm really proud of what he's done. Paseo was a dump before he got it. There was appliances. It was literally a dump. And like I said in that, or he said in that opening statement, it's hard to remember when things are so changed what it was before, but it was a dump, and now it's a beautiful piece of property. In the summer, it's lush and green, and the trees are vibrant, and it's beautiful. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay. You can give it to us, that's okay. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Apparently not. I'm going to call for the question.
Mr. Mayor,
Go right
I would
ahead.
like to amend my motion.
Please do.
I would like to defer this for a month, pending, I'd like to have more information about who the other companies are, the process, see the RFP for myself. I would just like some more information, so I would change my motion to defer.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion amended. We have a second to defer. Is there any discussion from the governing body? Any questions about that?
Mayor, I have a question, and it's for Mr. Montoya.
Go right ahead.
Is that okay?
Of course.
Mr. Montoya, do you plan to, I'm assuming, I haven't seen the RFP either, but I'm assuming it has a clause, a clause to protest.
Yes.
Are you planning to protest?
Well, I was wondering, I don't like to be where I'm not wanted, but I was thinking about it because of these secretive issues. It concerns me greatly, actually. I just don't feel like that's in keeping with the way we started and the kind of village we have. I just don't like it.
May I ask Attorney Nan Winter a question? Nan, does the deferral, assuming that we vote to defer, hold in abeyance the execution of the RFP?
Mayor, trustees, so the protest period is triggered by essentially a notice of award.
Yes.
Or the development of a fact or occurrence that leads you to believe you have a reason to protest.
Right.
So the village did send Mr. Montoya a letter indicating that he was not the selected or recommended awardee. However, this would have been the meeting where the award would have been made.
Right.
And it would have authorized you to negotiate. So the protest period, I think, can arguably be deferred until the award. So there is no reason for him to protest until the actual award, if it is next month.
Okay.
So it's a little complicating, but I think we can make an argument that until there's an award, there's no 15-day triggered protest period.
You answered my question. So is there any other questions or discussion from the governing body?
If you're not done.
Go.
Okay. So I'm inclined to defer it as well. Thinking about it more, and thinking about how, you send out a request for proposals. Proposals come in and they're scored, and then somebody's selected. I've never seen it where it's scored for a negotiation. So that strikes me as being a little odd. In other words, the proposals come in, and we already know what would be negotiated.
Not really.
No?
Not really. Not really. Because in this particular case, the RFP scope of work was pretty specific. So the negotiation has to occur to determine if that selected firm can actually, do the work. That's my understanding. And that was the way it would work. And I think that's why.
So,
go ahead.
Well, so you score I mean, there's categories, you have confidence that they can actually do this.
True.
But there's also scoring about, what is the lease, what, is there an amount or money, exchange of money and that sort of thing? That part you think would already be negotiated, right?
I don't believe so, no.
But would already be proposed, not negotiated, but
Actually, that's not my understanding. Attorney Winter, you want to try to,
Mayor, trustees, so the old lease contemplated the removal of trash, the repairing of fencing. It contemplated 15% of crop harvest going to the village. It contemplated building of additional fencing. So there's a lot that goes into this type of lease. There's a lot of room for negotiation. It also contemplated the payment of rent, and it contemplated the payment of the MRGCD water bill. So all of those things are sort of on the table. I have not seen this RFP, so I don't know what the scope of service was. I know what the scope of service was for the old lease, and it's pretty detailed. The bidder, I know, would have to submit an annual farming plan, an annual plan detailing exactly what he plans to sow there, what he plans to harvest, what improvements he plans on making, and the village gets, the concurrence and all that. One thing that crossed my mind when Mr. Montoya said the word secretive, the state procurement code does not allow the village to release the proposals until after the award.
that's correct.
So we are not allowed, pursuant to the state procurement code, to release the Southwest Soil Health or the Stella Acres LLC proposal until after the award. That's not secretive, that's the law.
well, not to the public, but you can release it to us, correct?
You can certainly visit with staff. I'm sure Ann will make the time to.
So what more would we do if we defer it? What would you like to see?
Well, I
I'm
think
I'm asking trustee.
I would like to, we've been down this road a few times, David.
Yes.
Since I've been around. This always makes me earn my $50 a month.
Yes.
So, but I want to be honest with you. You didn't score well, and I will support this RFP if my questions are answered. And basically, I would like to see the RFP. I would want to just understand fully the process. That I want to be reassured that the 5 judges or the 5 people felt really strong about these companies. I'd like to sort of have a little bit of background. I don't need to see their proposal, but I'd like to know a little bit more about them. Because as we've gone through before, a farmer doesn't come into this land and put a lot into it if he doesn't have a good at least 5 years and preferably longer to get a return on his investment. And so, I just would like to know more about who we're talking about and that the process was correct. And then I would be willing to vote and support what the group did if those questions are answered to my satisfaction.
so. Is there any more questions or discussion from the governing body?
Mayor, I have another question or two.
Sure.
If we defer this, is there anything on the land, 2 questions actually, that needs to happen now in this part, at this season, in the month of January and part of February?
Ann, would you?
Yes, Mayor, trustees, one of the reasons that we had the timetable the way it was because of the planting season is coming up. So part of it is giving the mayor plenty of time to negotiate with the incoming farmer so that that farmer can purchase seeds, get the property in the shape that they want by March 1. The other thing is, and we sent a letter to Mr. Montoya that in the event that he is not chosen, that we would have to work with him on dismantling items that he has on the property, such as corrals and hay and things like that, and to give him plenty of time should he not be selected, because we knew that there was this possibility. It's my understanding in the research that there was an RFP issued in 2011. It was a five-year RFP that ended, in 2013, that ended in 2018. So Mr. Montoya was the farmer from 2007 to 2013, and then an RFP was issued. He was the only respondent.
No, I didn't respond, but it wasn't necessary by the contract.
We can't have discussion from the audience.
So the research that I've done was there was an RFP issued in 2013, and the award was given to David Montoya for a legitimate 5-year contract ending in 2018. Now it's 2022, so the time has extended by 3 additional years, almost 4. So that's 9 years with an RFP, 7 years prior without an RFP. So we start to run into some procurement issues. I think it's okay for me to explain a little bit about the makeup of the committee if our procurement officer allows, without divulging names. There were staff from the village. There was also an agency partner, as well as a member of the agriculture committee who's a resident. So it was not just staff. There were no elected officials. And it was a very deliberative body. And I know Trustee Lewis has been a member of our committees and has been through the process. And we have an excellent procurement officer. In fact, we have 2 in the village, both Ms. Molina and the mayor.
Right.
And we were advised by council, and I am really comfortable with the process.
So, any further questions or discussion from the governing body? Go ahead.
One more, Mayor. Why don't we include cost in the RFP? Because that would make the mayor's job a lot easier from the negotiation perspective. Yeah. And I'm just curious, I mean, UNM asks for costs, a lot of government entities ask for costs. I'm just curious why we don't. And maybe that's something Nan needs to answer, I don't know.
If I can just jump in, and then maybe Nan can riff off of this response. This, Mayor and Trustees, was a very difficult one because we're asking for a farmer manager. So normally at the Agri-Nature Center, we rent acres for $200 an acre. Here's 40 acres over here. We're also asking this person to provide services for us. So it's both a service contract and an award to farm. So it's 2 things.
But still, there could be a cost requested for managing it and a cost requested for the construction at the same time, I think. I mean, I don't see why there couldn't be. Unless there's some codified requirement there.
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, Ann's right. It was a 2-pronged approach in both the old lease and in additional negotiations. Again, I hadn't seen the RFP, so I'm not sure what approach they took in the RFP, but it was a 2-pronged approach. They are renting valuable farming real estate owned by the village, managed by the village for the Department of Transportation. So there's a value to that, and I think we did some research years ago about what that acreage is worth. There was also the concept of you have to manage this property, you have to keep it clean, you have to make sure the setbacks are clean, that the roadways are visible, that there's no line of sight issues. But we also determined years ago that the value of the service for management was less than the value of leasing the farming real estate. So no matter who bid on this, and given the nature of the Constitution and the village's obligations under the New Mexico Constitution, it was probably going to be that whoever bid on this would end up paying the village some amount of money, which would be negotiated. So that's kind of the approach this took. So it was a mixed bag. It wasn't a simple design this building kind of approach.
I get that.
Yeah, okay. I hope that answers your question.
Mayor, let me just add something. I've done this for 30 years as well as Mr. Radovich, but.
Can you come to the podium and just give us your statement? Because I'm still going to ask for folks from the audience to come back up if they need to, because there is a different motion on the table.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe Craig again.
Sure.
I believe because the village does not have a written procurement code, you're underneath the state of New Mexico
Yes, we
procurement
are.
code.
That's correct.
So this is a qualification-based
Yes.
selection without price. So price, I don't believe would enter into it, or any cost. So it's strictly qualifications.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's interesting.
Any further questions or discussion from the governing body? We have an amendment. Go ahead.
I mean, I was assuming that a lot of work had already been done before George and I got here, and I didn't want to undo all the work that you guys had done, but now I'm hearing that you didn't have a whole lot of insight into the process, so I think a deferral is proper.
Okay. So,
If I may say something, typically we don't as trustees have a lot in the process.
Yeah.
Myself, I typically will support knowing the staff has put together a good group of people.
Yeah.
And I'm very respectful of the people that do this and take the time. In today's world, just because of a few words and a few allegations or a few comments, I just want to make sure
Okay.
that for our village residents, it's transparent. And that, as I said, I will come back next month, and if my questions have been answered, I will support this and vote for it.
so Attorney Nan Winter, we have an amended motion and a second to that amended motion. We've already had considerable public input. Do I need to do that again, or can we go right to the vote? We're going to vote. Okay, I'm going to call for the question. We have an amended motion and a second. Call for the roll call vote. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Okay. Item 13 is trustee informal discussion. Roundtable discussion is informal. The Board of Trustees will take no official vote or other action. I have one comment to make. With regard to the trailers at our mobile home park on 4th Street at the future Village Center site, the trailers are all empty and the site is ready to be cleared. The next step will be disposing of the trailers. Please let me or staff know if you have any further questions. So I'm going to open it to trustee informal discussion. I'm going to start with Trustee Lewis.
Okay, I just have one thing. Thank you very, Mr. Mayor, actually two. First of all, I'd like to welcome the new trustees.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you guys here. You have some big shoes to fill, but I'm totally confident that you guys will fill it. The second thing I have is, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to encourage you to give serious thought to maybe holding some type of strategic planning session. We heard about the session that, mitigating natural disasters and disasters.
Right.
I think as a village, the pressure that we are under between being an urban center in the middle of this whole community. I mean, every time they build a house in Rio Rancho and have an extra job in Albuquerque, it affects us. They're going to go through,
yeah.
They're going to come through, they're going to fly over. And I think we sit here and different good ideas come up. And our usual is to say, hey, Ann, can you and staff look at this? Like they don't have anything else to do. And we sort of heap it on them every month. And I think we need to step back. There's lots of issues that we're dealing with, and we have a lot of different things. But I think we need to step back and have a strategic plan of what we consider are the key issues for the next 3-4 years that we always keep in the back of our mind. So when we get in the forest and can't see, the trees, we step back. Because, I mean, we've got issues like traffic, homelessness, crime, an aging population, schools that are enrollments dropping in the village, airspace, housing, water rights. I mean, we open space. We've got a lot of different issues, and I think it would behoove us to have a priority of those and keep those in our mind and always be working on those while we're working on the other things. We keep pushing forward on our top issues. So that's what I have, and I would just like you to give some
Thank you
thought
very
to that.
much, and that will happen. Trustee Pacheco?
Thank you, Mayor. I totally agree with what Trustee Lewis just said. I think we need a set of priorities that stay on the radar all the time until that falls off. I think it's really important for our future. I think it's something that we are happy to work with you to do, Mayor. And I think we'd all, be able to add to it, kind of our thoughts for the future. Again, welcome to you both as trustees. Glad to have you. I do have a question on the 2nd Street turn onto El Pueblo. Is that Los Ranchos property or is that Bernalillo County?
No, it's the county.
It's the county.
It's the county.
I always cringe when I make that turn, and I guess I'm not supposed to, really, but it's scary, and I have to imagine that there are numerous accidents on that turn. I was just kind of curious if
My
we could do anything.
understanding is that the county's been looking at redesigning all of that for a long time, but it must not be their highest priority. That's the only thing I can tell you.
Obviously not.
It must not be. That's all I can tell you.
All right, I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't know where it lay. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Benavides.
Happy to be here.
Okay.
So I really like the presentation by David Dunaway, and I think his idea of putting together a committee to look at what can be done about aircraft noise is a good thing, with the possible caveat that we don't want to interfere with police protection,
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes, if there's something going on, all 3 local news stations has their own helicopter, and it's pretty darn noisy out there.
Sure.
So aside from that, I did run on a couple issues that I would like to do something about. And that is to look at the agricultural commercial zone and redoing that, maybe putting together a committee with some ideas, not to undo what's already been done, not to prohibit wineries, but to be more inclusive so that you don't have to be a multimillionaire to get an AC zone, and take away, do something about the problem areas like noise and parking, and get that into the AC code. So I think that's something that I'd like to work on. This is not my idea. Pablo Real wanted to have a park on 4th Street. He identified a piece of property on El Pueblo and 4th. Maybe it's that one. Maybe it's another one. I think that's a great idea. We need to look further north of the village and do some improvement everywhere in the village, basically. If we ever want to do a parade, maybe that'd be a great place to stage a parade and go down 4th Street. So I think that's worth looking into. I understand that this is not my idea, but somebody's looking at a Chamber of Commerce for the Los Ranchos, and I think that's a great idea. So I support that effort as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Radnovich.
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to apologize that I was late. I had a misunderstanding about whether it was going to be a Zoom meeting or not.
Sure, well, the next one will be.
So I do apologize to everyone about that, including citizens and residents. I would support, I really feel strongly, very similarly to Trustee Lewis. I think that we are in a position in the village of Los Ranchos that is very different than villages like Corrales, and not to point anybody out, but like Corrales or Algodones or any of the other smaller villages that aren't in the middle of a metropolitan area.
Of 500,000 people.
We have the crime issues,
Oh, yeah.
at least along 4th Street. We have vagrancy issues now, and we have the encroachment of urbanity, which I think the village has always considered itself more of a rural place, and it has been. And I would say it's semi-rural at this point, not rural, but I really think those kinds of issues are really important, and I totally support the workshop or whatever we end up doing for the trustees. I also wanted to mention that I know there's some businesses on 4th Street that don't seem to be following code. I think we need to have a more rigorous look at some of those businesses, because we built 4th Street, the newest part of it. It should attract businesses to the village. Which should increase our gross receipts tax. But if some of those businesses that exist there aren't following the rules, I think we need to attend to that. And I'm not going to point out any businesses, but they're there. The last thing is, I would be fully supportive of what I said earlier, that tree ordinance that Drew Seavey at our Planning and Zoning Commission was talking about. I'd be really supportive of more open space, more parks. I think a park along 4th Street could be good, but I think you want to make it a park that people will use. And 4th Street gets a lot of traffic, a lot of fast traffic. Another thing I wanted to mention is I was told by the planner at the county, the traffic planner at the county, that the county is moving forward, and you may already know this, Mayor, and you may as well, that the county's moving forward with, I don't like the term, but road diet for the land north of Farm and Table up to, I believe he said a half a mile north of Alameda. And so the timing for reducing the laneage on 4th Street, I think, is really good for us, especially with the county supporting that in their own efforts. So those are just a few things.
Well, thank you, Trustee Red.
And thank you for the
Acknowledgement.
that we're new here, and thank you for welcoming us.
Okay, with that, I need a second to adjourn the meeting. Okay, the
I'll
time
second.
is 10:07, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Wow, crazy.
We survived.
We did.
Should turn this off.